Welcome to the International Mentoring Community, all things mentoring lounge, where we have conversations, discussions. We might even get into a little bit of grit and sort of see what happens as we take a look at the subjects and concepts and practices aligned with mentorship, mentoring, mentor, and mentee, and everything in between. I'm Stephen Hobbs. With me is Doug Lawrence. We are your hosts for the broadcast, and we'll explain a little bit more about who we are in relation to the international mentoring community. But I just wanted to give you a sense of what it is we're going to cover today. We're going to take a look at a definition of mentoring, as we always do. And then we're going to talk about the practice, or how we talk about mentoring through the mentoring arrangement lens. And there's 18 key actions that you can take. We're certainly not going to go into all 18 of those today. We've chosen 4 that we want to share with you. And just to sort of highlight some other ideas about this notion of the use or the involvement in the mentoring arrangement, or mentoring system, as some people sometimes call it. It's in response to, yes, mentors are important, and if mentors really get to understand their practice, then they can be of greater service, extraordinary service with their mentees. So Doug, I think it's important that we just introduce who we are, so go for it.
Who am I today? Okay. I'm Doug Lawrence, and I am one of the co-founders of the International Mentoring Community. And I have my own practice of mentoring called Talent C. And with the IMC, or the International Mentoring Community, I play the role of the Director of Practice and Outreach.
And I'm Stephen Hobbs. I'm the other co-founder. I have my own company called Wealth Movement, WELLTH, about well-being, well-living, especially when it comes to mentoring. And I take care of the education certification. I have that directorship. And Doug and I got together a number of years ago. Doug certainly has a deep practice in mentoring. It's one of the ways that he goes about making a living. I am one who has a practice in it, but not as deep as what Doug is doing at this point in time, because I'm attempting to bring the stories of educating through mentoring forward and getting the certification set up. You can certainly learn more about us through internationalmentoringcommunity.com and attend our open conversations in this All Things Mentoring Community Lounge. And you can find us on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Mountain. And there is the YouTube channel for the International Mentoring Community. It's broadcast on Wealth Movement as well. We will start to put it on Talent C. And it is on Facebook and the Mentoring and Health page that you can certainly find connections to. So Doug, I think what we're going to do is we're going to jump in, and I'm just going to acknowledge that there's mentoring in the human resources area, both mentoring because of human resources, or what I prefer to call peopleship, and but there's also mentoring for the workplace, mentoring in the workplace, mentoring for the community. So there's lots of places where mentoring is important. The practice of mentoring is important, and not to be left with those. It could be mentoring for the government, mentoring in the government, mentoring for charitable organizations. There's lots and lots of ways to take a look at it, but I think it might be important for us to just go over what is mentoring as we see it through IMCs. So I'd like you to share, and then maybe if there's some aspect of that definition you want to highlight, that'd be great.
So the definition that IMC uses is mentoring is a two-way trusted relationship where the mentor and mentee learn and grow together through personal and professional development. And when we break that down, some of the key points that stand out for me are the aspect of the two-way trusted relationship. So very important that you have a trusting relationship in place. And it's also a collaborative approach because both the mentor and the mentee learn and grow together. So if you take a look at how some of the other models, like reverse mentoring, for example, is one that is very much focused on the younger person providing their wisdom and knowledge to a much older person, where this definition says, no, we both work together to share our wisdom and knowledge, and we're going to learn and grow together. And the other aspect of it that's really important that a lot of corporate programs don't address is the aspect that there is personal growth, that are personal development, and there's also professional development. And we need to always be mindful of looking at the personal development first before we tackle the professional one.
For sure. So the title of today's presentation is the 18 key actions to support the mentoring arrangement or mentoring system. And it's in response to, yes, mentors are important. And there are 3 key action verbs that we are connecting here: discuss, summarize, and manage. And while we're going to talk about the 18 key actions, usually you can put an action verb like discuss in front of the statement or the outcome, summarize, or manage. That's one of the ways in which we use it in the profile that we put into action from a certification point of view. That's one of the things that IMC offers is certification and the certificate of practice mentor. So you can learn more about that at the website. Now, earlier I mentioned is that we're looking at the mentoring arrangement, and yes, it's in the title. It's more about the how to the who. So it's about the structure, the systems, the processes that you would use to be able to create a foundation, or another metaphor might be seedbed. So it's about the how to the who. What we're talking about here is that sort of way in which to put the practice of mentoring in play. And therefore, there's a number of things that you've got to have ready to go to be able to have that happen. And yes, there is another way to look at it, which would be is the mentoring relationship or mentoring connection. And that's about the who to the how. It's about looking at ways of taking into consideration the humanness that's there, the being that's there, and what might we do to be able to support the mentor and mentee as they are in this relationship. But today is about the mentoring arrangement. It's more about the how to the who. Some people might say it has a real tactical, operational feel. Well, there's some of that in the mentoring relationship as well, but I understand where people are leaning into because it has this sense of the how and where this is going to take place. Now, I just would like to read something to you. It's a part of some writing that I'm doing, and I thought that it might be helpful to sort of get a sense of where we're going with this topic today before we look at 4 key actions connected to the mentoring arrangement. And this is what I'd like to share with you. The intention you make is fixed, which is the skeleton of your practice. So let me expand on that a little bit. And Doug always knows he can just jump in whenever he wants to jump in. So we'll just take it from here. The intention that you put in, that is the reason that you're doing mentoring is fixed in a sense. I'm going to be using mentoring. So when I mentor, I mentor. Kind of when I coach, I coach. And it is the skeleton of your practice. And therefore, the skeleton suggests, or the seedbed that's there, there's other things that are going to take place. And that's where the second part of the statement, and it's in the show more notes below as well. So just let me read that again. The intent you make is fixed, which is the skeleton of your practice. The form flows with the specific requests to which you attend as they arise. In other words, in this skeleton, this arrangement, the flow by which you deal with the specific requests is going to vary. It's what you're going to attend to. And therefore, you're going to celebrate the variations of the requests as learning moments for living and for mentoring. So as those requests come to you as a mentor with your mentee, and maybe from yourself as well through, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way because of the conversation. That's that two-way component that Doug mentioned, is that you can celebrate these requests. You can celebrate this form that flows within this skeleton of mentoring. It's a way in which to take a look at this arrangement and get you to just sort of stand back just a little bit, take a pause and look at it and go, okay, there's a little bit more to it than just jumping in and saying, here's my lived experience, here's my response to your question. There's a little bit more depth to it. And two words that Doug and I often use is deepen and enrich. And that's why we wanted to share this, this paragraph with you. So again, it's in the show more notes. Take a bit of time to read through it. And if you agree or disagree with it, love to hear what you got to say. So in this notion of this arrangement, one of the things we would encourage you is to look at the ritual rather than a routine. Routine is sort of, in my estimation, okay, this is a way of looking at it. Sometimes we fall into routines. It's sort of like a grave with the ends taken out, and you get sort of into like this rut routine kind of idea. Ritual has a sense of there's a celebration, there's something that's happening, and not each one of them is exactly the same. That's what this notion of the form that you flow with is really important. And with this arrangement, there is something that I think is really important to you. It's a word, adeption, which is a little bit different than you probably have heard before, because you may have heard adoption or adaption. The adeption is just taking out the A and O and putting an E in there. That's where it comes from. In other words, you become adept at how you adopt and adapt. So sometimes in your mentoring arrangement, your mentoring practice, when you first start off, there's a little bit more of the adopting of what people are sharing with you. And then eventually you get to a point where you start to adapt what's taking place. And so this notion of adeption is something that you can weave in because, Doug, is it mentoring? It's continuous, right? There's a continuous learning, continuous improvement, two-way trust relationship. You're learning from your mentee, right?
Right.
Yeah. And that's why Doug is so great to get his insights from a practice point of view, because he has these really wonderful stories that go with it. So he has certainly become more of an adaptive person, an adaptive mentor, right? He understands how to adapt and adopt. So playing with the word, I know that I'm hoping it helps you. I think there's something here that's really important, and it's three phrases that go together. And this is something, again, that Doug and I would encourage of you is know the mentoring approach, know this mentoring arrangement, then trust the mentoring approach. So there are things that we would encourage you, and then challenge the mentoring approach. We have seen some new mentors come in and they just, well, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it this way. And we go, well, why is that? Well, then we would suggest them, okay, that may be true, but know the mentoring arrangement. There's reasons that mentoring was set up in such a way, and trust it, give it a go, and then challenge it and find the ways to become adaptive, to adapt and to adopt ways that have meaning for you. And that's something that we encourage in all of the new mentors. And that's what really is highlighted in our certification process. Go through the certification process, learn the action outcomes associated with certification, especially if you're new, all right? Now, if someone is got some miles underneath the feet, then again, this might be a bit more of a checklist, some of these action outcomes. But if you're new, then we certainly encourage you to look at the profile associated with the certificate practice mentor, just so you have something to work with so that you can know that mentoring approach, trust that mentoring approach, and then challenge it through what it is that you're doing. Anything you want to add there, Doug, at this point in time before we look at 4 of the action outcomes associated with mentoring arrangement?
Just very quickly, that I look at it from the aspect that the mentoring arrangement is guided by process and concepts. And the mentoring relationship is how am I going to do, or how am I going to use or do, or any of those 2 words, how am I going to do that in a relationship, in a mentoring relationship. So it's kind of like taking, okay, I have all these tools that I can use, and now I'm going to take them and put them into practice.
So in many ways, the arrangement relationship is like 2 ends of a stick.
Yeah.
Right? Or 2 sides of a coin.
Yeah.
And therefore, to have the coin, to pick up the stick, you need to understand both ends. And today is about the arrangement. We will talk about supporting the mentee, the relationship, on another video. So it's a good point. I think it's one that we sometimes miss. And that's why we're asking people to just step back a little bit before you dive into the deep end of the pool. Maybe you need to just sort of swim around a little bit and just get a sense of what the arrangement is about. So great point. So what I'd like to do is just sort of highlight 4 of the actions and the outcomes that are listed below in the show more notes. And we're just going to emphasize the 4. And Doug, I'd like you to just share a little bit. One is manage 5 sustainable elements of a mentoring arrangement. So of course, manage is to take care of the system that gets created because of these elements to be able to form the mentoring arrangement. But I think it would be helpful to know what are the 5 sustainable elements that we're managing.
Certainly. And how I came at this was I came at it from the answer to the question of how. So what are some of the things that I need to be mindful of? What are, of the 5 sustainable elements of a mentoring arrangement? So that takes us back to the idea of the process and concept. So communication, having that caring and personal relationship, mutual respect and trust, collaboration, and an exchange of knowledge. And that's where the 2-way trusted relationship comes, where we share back and forth, mentor, mentee, and we both learn and grow on a personal and professional basis. So those are the value of the 5 sustainable elements that jump out for me.
And someone asked us not too long ago, they said, in that order? And your response was?
No.
And why is that?
Because number one, each mentoring arrangement is unique to the individual that you're working with. So that's the primary reason, is the uniqueness of that. And nowadays you need to be able to customize on the fly your mentoring arrangement because of the impact of mental health and dealing with mental health issues. So it's a matter of kind of being able to address some of that stuff on the fly.
So there's this sense that there is an intention of a mentoring arrangement, sort of like the skeleton of the practice, but the form, the ways in which you go about doing it is going to vary a little bit. That sort of goes back to that earlier statement. And again, it's in the show more notes. So yeah, I just thought it was fun because I remember when the person asked us, right, I at least I went, oh, all right. Right. Sometimes we forget, we just get used to presenting. And it's a great reminder to just, oh, no, hang on, it doesn't always go in a specific order. Sometimes there is a bit of a structured order, but a lot of times in mentoring, you're flowing in that presentation, in that form that you're using. So there's one that I wanted to go over, which was summarize the value of the mentoring arrangement for the mentor. And the word summarize there is to remind us to keep collecting what's the value of the mentoring arrangement. Is that I think you would agree, Doug. 4 years ago, your summary and mentoring arrangement. 2 years later, there are new insights, new investigations, new ideas that keep coming forward that heightens, widens, lengthens the notion of the value, the truth, the worth, the utility of the mentoring arrangement. I think you would agree from your practice perspective, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to be able to summarize that, one of the great ways to do it, and Doug speaks about this a lot, and it's actually going to go into the next statement that we want to take a look at, is around the documentation. So do you want to share the documentation? And what we'll do is we'll highlight some ways in which to capture this value component.
Well, the documentation primarily speaks to the utilization of a mentoring log. That's one of the main things. And a lot of times we have a tendency to just focus on that, but there's actually documentation when you create a mentoring program. There's documentation that needs to be created that's going to help guide where the program is going to go and what are some of the benefits and what are some of the outcomes that we're looking at being able to put into place as a result of the implementation of mentoring. So those are some of the things that we definitely need to take a look at.
And in the certification program that we use at IMC, it's very much an evidence-based learning approach. In other words, creating a portfolio, the mentoring log that Doug just mentioned. So there is a documentation that's going along, a way in which to summarize. There's reflection activities, case examples to go through. And that is bolstering this notion of summarizing it so that when you go to do it, manage the mentoring arrangement, you've actually got ideas, or you can go back and look at, oh, hang on, that's interesting. That's why the certification process is open book. We've had people, what? Open book? What are you talking about? No, we're attempting to encourage the summarizing of the value of the mentoring arrangement, how you manage it and how you deepen the practice of it so that you can discuss it so that we can understand if it is becoming sort of embodied in who you are. It is actually something that has a felt approach to it for you. That's why we're doing it. And therefore, documentation is really important because it's really, I sort of look at it this way. When you write it down, it tends to stick around longer than if you just speak about it.
Yeah.
Right. Words matter. And sometimes words just float around. But if you write them down and you see them again, they actually stay with you a little bit longer. And that's why people, say, well, journaling is important. And I know not everyone likes to journal. I get that. But certainly from a mentoring arrangement point of view, from a certification point of view, we are encouraging the documentation component. Anything you want to add to that? I sort of elaborated on just a little bit more.
No, the big thing is, the most important thing, that if you take anything away from this conversation today is the day I'm going to start my mentoring log.
Yes.
And mentors need to be documenting their interaction with their mentees, and there's a number of different things that you can do to provide that information that you're going to need to have later down the road. So, at some stage, you want to be able to take that mentoring log and actually how I use mine is I use trigger words that help me remind me of various situations and what the outcome was.
For sure. Which brings up the fourth of the action outcomes, which is manage issue identification of the mentoring arrangement. So issues here, think of the issues as a question. A question needs an answer. Therefore, an issue has an initiative. It has something that you're going to do. And there are two kinds of issues. There are problems which need to be solved, and there are appreciations that need to be expanded or extended. And when a mentee comes to you in the mentoring arrangement, dear mentor, sometimes it tends to be a lot more about problems that need to be solved and they're wanting to work through it. But sometimes they'll come with, hey, can I do more of this? What do you think? And you have a conversation. That is an appreciative issue, right? That needs to be expanded and extended. And those ones I so enjoy because you get into, oh, I got to solve another problem. Oh, I got to extend an appreciation. It's kind of a fun way to get into it. So sometimes there's the issues that the mentee's bringing. There might be an issue that you may be bringing. There might be a shared issue about the mentoring arrangement together. That's why if you look at issues as a question that needs an answer, then it's an initiative that goes with the issue. And that's what really supports, deepens, and enriches the mentoring arrangement. So those were 4 out of the 18. You can look at the others. We have videos about them and the international mentoring community. You can certainly dive in and look into more of them. When Doug and I got together for today's session, we said, look, we could probably spend 50 minutes. We could spend 90 minutes going over each one of these, but we decided that we're going to keep it shorter today and encourage you to go look into the IMC YouTube channel, or if you want to, ask us about the library, and we'd be happy to do that. So we certainly would invite you back again on a Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain through the different places. And if you are listening in here, you know one of the places that you can find it. And as we tend to do every time, is because I get the share coming in, Doug gets to share a thought going out, and when I know he's finished his sharing, I'll just say take care, and we'll end the stream, we'll end the broadcast. So Doug, I think we're at that point where I think it would be a good idea to close off and wish everyone well. So your thought to close off?
So just in closing, and I'm probably going to sound like a broken record, but I know from my own personal experience that today is the day that you need to start your mentoring log. And you need to have that in place as you move forward through the certification process. And it will become the cane that you use for walking from point A to point B. So let's get it started today.
So everyone, take care.